Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Nehemiah. We're going to be starting chapter 11 this lesson and probably going to be getting into chapter 12 also. But before we begin, our theme verse for Lunch with the Lord, Jeremiah 15:16. Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, as we get into Nehemiah chapter 11, verses 1 through 3 deal with the repopulation of the city of Jerusalem. Now, let's read verses 1 through 3, and it says here, "And the rulers of the people dwelt at Jerusalem. The rest of the people also, they cast lots to bring one out of every 10 to dwell in Jerusalem, the holy city, and 9 parts to dwell in other cities. And the people blessed all the men that willingly offered themselves to dwell at Jerusalem. Now these are the chief of the provinces that dwelt in Jerusalem. But in the cities of Judah dwell every one in his possession in their cities, to wit, Israel, the priests and the Levites and the Nethinims and the children of Solomon's servants." Now, the purpose of the repopulation of the city was probably more about the safety of the city than anything else. We are told that the rulers of the people decided to live in the city, but this wasn't going to be enough. There wasn't really enough rulers of the children of Israel to populate it enough to, in a sense, protect the city. Now in verse 2, some people willingly chose to live in the city, and they did so with the blessing of the other people. But it seems that the people of verse 2 were above and beyond those who were chosen by lots. So let's read verses 1 and 2 again. It says here, "The rulers of the people dwelt at Jerusalem." So we know that the heads of each tribe of Israel, they decided they're going to live in the city. And then it says here, the rest of the people, well, they also cast lots. So they were casting lots. And 1 out of every 10 was, if the lot fell on your family, then you were chosen to go in and to live in the city. And then it says the other 9 parts to dwell in other cities. That means outside the city of Jerusalem. Then it says in verse 2, "And the people blessed all the men that willingly offered themselves to dwell at Jerusalem." So it seems that the people of verse 2 were part of those who were not chosen by lots, but they wanted to live in the city anyways. Even though the lot didn't fall on their family, they decided, we want to live in the city of Jerusalem anyways. So they got a blessing by the other Jews to live there. Being somewhat forced to live in Jerusalem because the lot fell on you and your family would give a perfect excuse for some to complain. If you had a farmland or something and you grew wheat or whatever, barley, and you had acres of land outside Jerusalem and the lot fell on your family, and all of a sudden now you have the pressure on you to want to have to move into the city. And what are you going to do with your farmland? So there seems to be a door open that people would complain because their lot fell on them and they didn't really want to go to the city. Remember, most of the builders of the wall were farmers, having sheep and goats and cattle and orchards and vineyards, wheat fields and barley fields. So there would be no room to have vast amounts of land for these things. The room inside the city wasn't that big to have farmlands. It wasn't. City of Jerusalem is a city. It's not a farmland. So we do know that from verse 3 that there were pharmacists, and there were, I'm sorry, from chapter 3, from Nehemiah chapter 3, if you read the list of people in chapter 3 who helped to build the wall, we know that there were pharmacists and there were jewelers who helped to build the wall. And it may have been that some of these people, some of these pharmacists and jewelers and other people were willing, they willingly took the place of some of the farmers who were chosen by lot. Now, we don't know for sure. It doesn't say it. But it's very possible that maybe someone who wanted to live inside the city, but the lot didn't fell on them, they said, well, I'll take the place of this family because they have a farmland and they're growing things, and that's their income, that's their living out there. So again, there's no direct details how this happened, but it seems that that's what was taking place. We do not know how it all worked out, but Nehemiah does not say that there was an uproar or that there was division among the people over this, which it could have easily developed into that. There could have been an uproar on the 10% that were chosen to go into the city and live there. Yeah, there could have been some hard times there with feelings and things like that, being in a sense forced to go and live in the city. So it all worked out. It all worked out. The people got together, and it worked out as far as filling up the city with people, repopulating the city, so that the people who wanted to live in the city did live in the city. And the city was filled, and I would say filled, but it had people in it enough to protect the city. Now, we come to verses 4 through 24, and we're not going to read all these verses, but verses 4 to 24. Now, in these verses, we will see a breakdown of those people who went to live inside the city of Jerusalem. Now, in verses 4 through 6, we see the descendants of Judah. In verses 7 through 9, we see the descendants of Benjamin. And in verses 10 through 14, we see the priests. In verses 15 to 24, we see the Levites and those who worked in the temple. Now, verses 25 through 36. Now, in these verses, we see the Jews who settled outside of the city. Now, because all of the land was ruled by the Persians, they were free to settle wherever they wanted to, as long as they kept peace in the land. Therefore, some of them probably settled in their family's original hometown, such as Hebron or Beersheba or Anathoth. Some of these places were 20 and 30 miles away from the city of Jerusalem. So you've got Jewish people coming from Babylon. Remember, these Jewish people had never lived in Babylon, never lived in Jerusalem. They didn't know anything about the land. Only thing that they knew about it was what they heard from their ancestors. And knowing the Jewish custom, and knowing how they are with genealogies and things, it's not far-fetched at all, even many generations down, for them to pass down where they were from, the city they were from. My great-great-grandfather, was from Hebron, and my grandfather lived there, and I lived there, and so it was passed down to the children. And people that were, even though it was many, many decades that these Jewish people had been away from the land, yet these Jews who came back from Babylon, who had never seen the land or never known anything about it, yet the tradition of their family was passed down. So when they go back, they already know that they're from Hebron, or they've got ancestors from Beersheba. And many of them probably did go to their ancestors' land, and they did start farming or working. However, so this is a chapter 11 is repopulating. The main issue is the repopulation of the city so that it's fortified. Not so much fortified with an army, but fortified with people. And it becomes a vibrant city again. It's not just a shell of a city where very few people are there, but no, it's a living, vibrant city with people in it working and doing things. And the gates are being used, and the walls, the guards on the walls. It's an active city now. And then, of course, the last part of the chapter 11 is in a sense, repopulating the areas, the lands around Jerusalem. So now we get into chapter 12. And chapter 12, verses 1 through 26. Now, this portion of scripture can be broken down into two sections. The first section is verses 1 through 11. And that's the names of the Levites and the priests that came to Jerusalem with Zerubbabel about 80 to 90 years earlier. And then the second portion, the second breakdown is verses 12 through 26. And in this portion here, you see the names of the heads of the priests and the Levites at the present time, at the time of Nehemiah. So the first list, verses 1 through 11, are the priests and the Levites that came from Babylon to Jerusalem with Zerubbabel when they first built the temple. And now the second list is those heads of the families and the priests that came with Nehemiah. Shouldn't say with Nehemiah, but at Nehemiah's time that he was there in Jerusalem. Now, in verses 27 through 43 of chapter 12, we have the dedication of the wall. All right, the wall now is going to be dedicated. I'm going to stop where I'm at now because the wall dedication is going to take a lesson or two. It's very, very interesting. And I'm going to stop this lesson here, and we're going to continue on in chapter 12 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know He walks with you.